Welcome to a little bit of Playing in the Lab, networking with Fishstyle. What we're going to go ahead and do today is start doing some Spirent TestCenters between two TestCenter ports. So real quick, what I have in the other room is I have three Cat9Ks, the 9300s. They're all the latest code version. They're already all set up and running. So Cat9K 10, 20, and 40. I'll likely just call them 10, 20, and 40. And then I already have OSPF up between them, all area 0. And what I also have over on the left-hand side is I have a Spirent TestCenter port that is already cabled up and configured to Cat9K 10. And that device already has an IP address on it, is configured in the Spirent TestCenter, and can ARP its default gateway, which is on Cat9K 10. On Cat9K 40, we're cabled up, but the configs are not done. So one thing I am going to show you is that you'll notice that there are two types of lines here. There's solid black line between the Cat9Ks and also the dashed lines to the Spirent TestCenters. In all of the diagrams that I tend to use, I try to make sure, as some of you all know, I also like doing network detecting. So I try to make sure that the crime scene map, which for me is the diagram, tries to help from a troubleshooting perspective as much as possible. So dashed lines for me mean that that is a trunk port. Anyway, we'll be successfully working once we actually get the Spirent TestCenter traffic working between the two Spirent ports. What we're going to go ahead and do first is, as I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and go to the Spirent TestCenter port that is off of the Cat9K and verify that that device can ARP its default gateway on the Cat9K. So let's do that first. So let's go ahead and go to the Spirent TestCenter, and as you can see, and right here, I like to make sure that I label the ports on the Spirent TestCenter, and yes, I do leave the port that it's actually on at the end. So I have on the Cat9K, I have done it with a VLAN, so it's VLAN 2. And it is just a name LAN. It's locally significant. The IP address is 10.1.2.101. And you can see that the default gateway is resolved. Now what can happen, and I'll go ahead and show this to you right here, is that if we do apply, I made a change. And what apply does is it says that there has been a change on the graphical user interface, which is what you see in front of you, that is not been pushed out to the Spirent TestCenter appliance, which is in the lab. And so since that is the case and I made a change, it could be a very fundamental change. So it changes this to an unresolved status. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and change it back, apply, because I do want it to be 101. And then a couple things I can do here. I can either come here and I can do ARP and start ARP or neighbor discovery, because this is IPv4 and IPv6, on just this appliance, or I can go ahead and come up here and hit what I call the big ARP button in the sky. So if we hit the big ARP button in the sky, it'll actually do all devices on here. If we come here and do it, it'll just do this one. So for right now, we're just going to go ahead and do this one. So the MAC address is resolved, and if we were actually to come here and ping our default gateway, I can ping, and it shows that everything is perfectly fine. So we'll go ahead and clear. So what are we going to go ahead and do next? Well, what we're going to do is, again, we verified that 10.1.2.101, which is the device that I have created before this, is accessible over and can ARP its default gateway. You also notice that I had a VLAN in it. So once you actually already have a traffic generator, it's very easy to copy and paste. Traffic generator port's very easy to copy and paste. And so what we're going to do next is we're going to go ahead and copy the Spirent TestCenter device that we were just in, that's connected to the Cat9K 10, and we're going to paste it over to the port that's connected to the Cat9K 40. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to come up here, and the way that I tend to do that is we have a couple choices. We can either come here and we can copy it, but I actually like to come up here to all devices, and I like to do a copy here, so copy emulated device. I really much prefer doing this. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go down here to where the Cat9K is, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to paste. Apparently it did not, I'm doing it in the wrong place. I'm going to go ahead and paste the emulated device. So I'm actually going to go into devices and then go into paste. Now what you'll see is that when I did that, the name changes, which is no big deal. So I'm just going to go ahead and say this is off of the Cat9K-40. Now one of the things that's very important is I'm not actually using VLAN 2 over there. I'm actually using VLAN 41. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to come in here and change the 2 to a 41. Now, sometimes that's actually a lot faster and easier for me. Another thing that you can do is you can go ahead and make a lot of changes or custom changes all at the same time. Now, so I copied it, so now the question becomes, and I've already clicked apply because it's my habit to click apply. So the question becomes, can I ARP it? Okay, can I ARP it? And the answer is that I can't. Why? Because I already told you that I have not set up the Cat9K 40 side at all, which means that really what I have to do is the next thing I have to do is I have to go to the Cat9K 40, I have to create VLAN 41, and I have to create the SVI. And I also want the gigabit interface, gigabit 1021, to look like my typical Spirent TestCenter connected port that I already have over on Cat9K 10. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at how I had things set up over on Cat9K 10, and then we're going to go to Cat9K 40 and we're going to do that. So let's go look at Cat9K 10. So if we do a show VLAN, I have a VLAN 2 and I call it TestCenter. So let's go ahead and go over to VLAN 40, and this is an alias of mine, by the way. 41, I'm so sorry. And it is just name TestCenter. Okay, now if we go ahead and look over here, show run interface VLAN 2. It's an SVI interface VLAN 2, and I've already gone ahead and put it in the OSPF area, as well as I've done load interval 30 on it. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to basically move this over here so that we can see both at the same time. And I'm going to do an interface VLAN 41. IP address is 10.40.41.1, 255.255.255.0, and I'm going to have IP OSPF 100 area 0.0.0.0 and load interval 30. And because it's an SVI, default behavior, so I'm going to go ahead and do a no shut. Now let's look at the interface that I actually have, gigabit 1021. So this is the interface that is actually connected on Cat9K 10 to the Spirent TestCenter port. And I'll tell you a couple things that I always do. I'm a bit of a control freak, so I always use a loud VLAN when I'm connecting to Spirent TestCenter ports, and actually, honestly, whenever I can. I always use a loud VLAN. Reason is I've been doing CPOCs and lab work for the past 17 some odd years, advanced services intact prior to that, and the amount of times that I've gotten burned because somebody forgot to do something or left things wide open is just too numerous to count. And so because of that, again, a bit of a control freak, and for those who know me, I also love troubleshooting. And my view of being a network detective is also to try to help you get to resolution faster. So I'm going to go ahead and come over here. I'm going to do a show gigabit 1021, not show, sorry. So switch port mode trunk, and I'm only going to allow VLAN 41 on here. I'm going to do a load interval 30, and I am going to go ahead and do a spanning tree port fast trunk, and it's just saying, do you really know what you're doing? So let's go ahead and do a show interface trunk, and we can see that 41 is now over there. we do is show spanning tree, VLAN 41. We're still in a learning state because I just created it all right now. It didn't actually have an interface on it. I'm the root of the bridge. So a couple more seconds. And we're forwarding. So I'm the root of the bridge. Now, if we were actually having VLAN 41 not be just an edge port, if I needed to trunk it someplace else, I would not have done spanning tree port fast. I only do spanning tree port fast when it's on a stick, when it's a Spirent TestCenter or a traffic generator or something that is on a stick. Now, why did I do a trunk port? If you actually look at my interface, if you look at my PowerPoint here, I only have VLAN 2 on the left side and I only have VLAN 41 on the right side. That's because of the fact that I've worked with the Spirent TestCenter and a lot of traffic generations for many, many years now. And sometimes you decide that you want to try something. Maybe this is going to be a data VLAN. You want to have a voice VLAN, but you only have the one port. So I tend to, unless the customer or what I'm trying to do is very specific about the fact that it needs to be an access port, what I go ahead and do is I just go ahead and do a trunk port. And for me, that has really helped in a lot of situations where we do like a little bit of, hey, let's try this or let's try that. It's not saying that you should do this in a production environment, but if you're a lab rat like me and you do a lot of lab work, this is pretty important. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now let's go ahead and verify that the Spirent TestCenter that we just created over on Cat9K40 can actually ARP its default gateway. So if we come back over here, and we go to the Cat9K40 and we ARP, then we should see that we don't have resolve failed anymore. We should actually get resolved. Oh, resolve failed. So let's figure out why we have resolve failed, and I actually already see it. So one of the things that happens when you're actually copying and pasting is that you tend to forget. Now I have two choices here. So you can see that VLAN 2 was 10.1.41. Actually, VLAN 2 was 10.1.2. When I did the copy and paste, I changed the third octet 2 to a third octet of 41, but I didn't change the second octet. We have a couple choices here, realistically. Since I've already showed you the copy and paste, and I actually didn't mean for this to happen, let's go ahead and delete this. And let's add the good old-fashioned way. So I'm going to go ahead and say that the number of ports is a 1. The VLAN ID is going to be a 41. We're going to do a next. We're going to come here, 10.40.41.101, and it'll automatically go ahead and do this. Now, one thing that you'll notice on the Spirent TestCenter a lot of times is the priority actually was a 7 before. I modified that. And also when you have, this is the priority for the, so this is the costs, the class of service on the trunk port, and this is what the default will be for any streams that are made on the at the TOS layer, at the IP precedence layer. And so I change all of those because it drives me crazy to then need to do other things later. So we can go ahead and do finish, and let's apply. And so now we see 10.40.41, so let's go ahead and ARP. And now it should be resolved, and it is. So it's resolved, which means that we can actually resolve the default gateway, which is on Cat9K40. So now let's go ahead, and what we're supposed to do next is we're supposed to go ahead and build a bidirectional stream between the Spirent TestCenter ports. Now, I will tell you that for years I have been using the Spirent TestCenter. It is what is known as a packet blaster. It can do other things as well. And it does, I create two, when I say I create a bidirectional stream, what I'm actually going to do is that's the way it comes across in my mind. But what you're going to notice is I'm going to create two unidirectional streams. So Spirent TestCenter traffic is like ships in a night, which is fantastic for when you're trying to do troubleshooting and traffic stuff in the lab, because if I got to the other side and I sent 100 frames in this direction, and the other side got that 100 frames, but in the other direction, none are coming back, a layer 4 through 7 traffic generator would give you complete failure, which would not give you the clue or the fact, which is the evidence, which is that the traffic does work in this direction. So the reason why the session, the conversation failed is because you can't get back. So for me, again, this is fantastic. It's one of the reasons why I love the Spirent TestCenter from this perspective. Most of my testing, unless I'm using a firewall, is the Spirent TestCenter. So let's go ahead and come back over here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to create streams. So basically what happens is you can pick which ports you want to have like talk to each other, and you can do a whole bunch of stuff. I don't have a lot of devices yet, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is just say, you know what, I want the port that I know that's off of Cat9K10 to the port that I know that's off of Cat9K40. Admittedly, it's a lot easier to go ahead and leave all of them clicked and go to the next screen and just find it, but I have been burned that I accidentally picked the wrong thing, so this is what I do. First and foremost, I want bidirectional, and I want show all headers. So I want this port, this is the source port, I want this port to talk to this port. And then I add it, I click next, and I typically name them later. Just to let you know, I always start with 512. Why do I always start with 512? Because, again, I've been using the Spirent TestCenter, and prior to that, the Smart Bits, for many years now, and I've done lots of different types of testing. Sometimes if I pick 1500 as my starter one, but I'm doing MPLS or GRE encapsulation or whatever, my traffic doesn't get through, and because of the fact that I picked a size that was too big. If I pick a size that's like 64 and I'm using a very, very small, older box that's trying to do GRE encapsulation or something like that in software, I can end up hitting a packets per second issue of how quickly it can encapsulate. So I just pick 512. 512 is always my go-to number to make sure that the traffic is working first. Now, from this perspective, a lot of people will go ahead and you can add the UDP here, you can add the ports here, you can do a lot of things. For the purposes of what we're about to do, we'll figure that out and play with that later. So we're going to leave it alone. I'm going to go ahead and change it to rate-based, and I'm going to do 100 frames per second, and I'm going to go ahead and say finish. Now, what's really beautiful about this, if you think to yourself, well, what's 100 frames per second? What's really nice is I can actually come here and do megabits per second. That didn't work the way that it usually does. Oh, I know why, because I haven't clicked apply yet. So let me do that again. So apply. And let me also change this screen right here to the screen that I want in just a second. So you'll notice again that I did apply, so it's gone. And so whenever it's grayed out, whenever my mind just sees, whenever it's green, I just go there and click it out of habit. So let's go ahead now and go back to what I was saying. So if I do this, since I've already applied it and it's already out there, if I change it to megabits per second, it will translate for me what 100 frames per second with a fixed length of 512 would be in megabits per second. So I can quickly know, and you can quickly see this is not a lot. Okay, but that's the reason why I use it. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to hit the big ARP button in the sky. And then what you'll actually see is right down here, it'll say all attempted ARPs resolved successfully. And you have a couple different choices. We can just come here and say that I just want to start this stream right here, so I can just start, or I can actually hit the start button, which is right up here. Which actually is now gone. So I click the start here. You can see it's working. The little colors are green. If they turn orange, that means you have a problem. A lot of times you'll find that your default gateway isn't resolved anymore. It means probably you made some change and haven't rearped. And a little blue. Now, here's what drives me absolutely crazy. Spirent, I love you. You still drive me crazy on this. The default view down here for basic traffic counters, what I really want to see is I want to see 100 frames per second. I can't make hide or hair of this. So it's not the way that I want to have it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to go ahead and customize the view. And we're going to come down and we're going to find the two that have to do with signature frames per second. And we're going to put them first. So let me go ahead and do that. Oops, this is actually frames. This is not frames per second. So I picked the wrong one. So I want generated signature rate frames per second. And I want that all the way first. Then the next thing I want is I want receive signature frame rate per second. So what is this? Well, it's 100 frames per second. So what it actually is all this other stuff, like right here, like total transmit count per frames. This is great, but for 99.9% of the testing that I do, all I want to know is right now, what is going on? I'm sending 100 frames per second, and the other side is receiving it. Now, if I change this side to 50 frames per second and I click apply, you'll be able to see a little bit easier that the device off of Cat9K10 is sending 50 frames per second, and the device off of Cat9K40 is receiving 50 frames per second. And you can see that right here as well. The device off of Cat9K10 is sending 50 frames per second, and this is receiving. So this means right now, this is what's happening right now. I can't do any failures of pulling a cable, checking routing, failing a router, failing a switch, doing whatever, until I actually know that I have the right traffic. So this is what I do. And another thing that you might notice is that I actually also tweak out my bar here as well. But that's it. And now we have streams going from the Spirent TestCenter device off of Cat9K10 with the Spirent TestCenter device off of Cat9K40. Hope you had fun. See ya.